Ahoy, everyone! My name is Bobby Shortle, and I'm here with Nick Rocco Scalia, and we are the Intrepid Filmographers. Every miniseries, we chart a course through the full filmography of an under-discussed genre or journeyman filmmaker. In this expedition, we do our best to try and be explorers, using our years of film knowledge to help guide us, but always being open to discovering new things about the medium we love so much. This week, we continue our special expedition into the films of Peter Jackson, and today we are talking about his true passion project, 2005's King Kong, and find out if it really was beauty that killed the beast, or a 3-hour runtime. Nick, how you doing tonight, my friend?
I think it was the airplanes, but yeah, I'm sitting on top of the world tonight, or sitting on top of the Empire State Building.
So, we heard talk about Peter Jackson, King Kong. Obviously, we've talked about all three of the Lord of the Rings movies. We have an episode for each one of those. And of course, that's like, Return of the King is his pinnacle, right? The movie makes $1 billion. It's, it's the culmination of this crazy, ambitious, successful, creative project and endeavor. One in which, he had to convince a lot of people to let him do it. And when he did it, it paid off in spades, right? Everything he did worked out. And then after that happened, he won all these Oscars. It happened. Basically, he was given the proverbial blank check, right? Do whatever you want, with whatever you want, with as much money as you want, because who are we to say that you don't know what you're doing, right? And the movie he chooses is to make is King Kong, a movie that he has been in love with since he was a child, a movie that he credits for making him want to be a filmmaker, a movie that he tried to recreate on 8mm when he was young.
I'd love to see that, by the way.
I would too. A movie
12-year-old Peter Jackson's Super 8 King Kong movie. I would kill to see that.
A movie he almost made before he made Lord of the Rings, and then it was shelved, and then, obviously, and then Universal goes, now, whatever you want, do it. We don't care. Like, yes, you want to come work with us? Absolutely. We get the next Peter Jackson movie, right? They give him all the money in the world, and he goes off and makes this, like you said, at the time, I think one of the most expensive movies ever made. Movies, though, of course, like Hollywood accounting is always a weird thing, and how they calculate those costs is always a little bit, shaky, but it was a very high budgeted movie in which he had full creative control to do what he wanted to do.
And a very big movie, although seeing it after those three Lord of the Rings films, like this is kind of the come down from all that, right?
Yeah,
like
sure.
It's, filmmakers will do the very, very big, prestigious movie, and then they'll make something, like a 90-minute sort of like indie film. They kind of go back to their roots. For Peter Jackson, that's to make this $207 million epic, which is almost as long as a Lord of the Rings movie, but yet still the scope of those is so big. This still feels like a smaller movie, even though it's like one of the biggest movies ever.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. It's
like who can say that other than Peter Jackson?
Exactly. It's one of those fascinating things where I think, and we're going to talk about this obviously as we go through the movie, but we mentioned with, Lord of the Rings and how it's this inflection point of a certain type of filmmaking transitioning into what the modern style of filmmaking is, this more digital, really digital age of filmmaking. And it's just so fascinating that Peter Jackson also, this movie is in that, obviously on the other side of that line, right? In so many ways. It's obviously because it's a giant, humongous movie, and he never makes anything, after Lord of the Rings, he never makes anything that's not a humongous movie. Even his small movie is a giant budgeted movie. And we can talk about how that maybe affected his career and his sort of longevity, because he hasn't made a movie in now 10 years or whatever it is at this point. But, I think this movie is fascinating. I think that, I think it's going to be an interesting discussion. I want to start out with, I guess, King Kong in general. Obviously, on the list of important, legendary Hollywood films, it's near the top, right, of everything. It basically, is one of the most successful movies ever made. It galvanizes and inspires, like Jackson, a whole host of people who are going to make movies in 20 years, right? People who are going to come out and they're going to be making these big movies because they saw that movie when they were a kid and they wanted to recreate it, when they were able to get the keys, to the kingdom. It's the pinnacle of basically effects at the time, right? Using all this stop motion stuff to really do stuff that had not been done before. And, I think when you're a kid, when we were kids, I don't know if it happens anymore, obviously, because we're a couple generations past that now. it was one of those movies, I think, that, like, for me anyway, that it was like, my dad was like, oh, you got to watch King Kong if you're going to watch movies, like that kind of vibe, to it. And so I saw it at a very young age and really liked it. I was very into like monster movies when I was a kid. So that, and like all the old Godzilla movies and all that kind of stuff, very into that. And so I have a soft spot for it. It's not like one of my movies. Like, I wouldn't say like, oh, like when I think about the movies that I think of that define my taste in movies, King Kong is not one of those. But obviously it is a legendary movie that, I think, I definitely was a thing for me when I was a kid, not so much as I got older. What is your relationship to the original King Kong, Nick?
Not really like yours. I sort of had the same experience. My dad's like, this is the movie. Like, if you really love movies, and it was Planet of the Apes. Actually, I really love that movie, the original Planet of the Apes from '68.
Very good movie.
A much more modern movie than the original King Kong.
Yes,
from '33.
very. At the time, they were like, King Kong's old when they made
Primates.
The first
It's a primate movie.
Yeah.
So I kind of, like you saying that, the thing that immediately flashed in my head was Planet of the Apes. I don't think I actually saw the original King Kong till I was in film school.
Oh, okay.
And it was just one of those, it was like a film history course or something like that. And I remember really liking it, but it wasn't something I had grown up with. But something about that original King Kong, like just I love like a quest narrative and adventure sort of movie, like an old-fashioned, jungle adventure. Like, they don't make those anymore. This one, Peter Jackson's King Kong is clearly throwing back to that idea, the tramp steamers and the, just the hacking your way through the jungle, that kind of, all the stuff that inspired Spielberg to make the Indiana Jones movies, all those things. I've always kind of had a soft spot for that. I think seeing that, as a film student, just seeing the stop motion work and how good it is and how much it holds up.
Yes.
It does. There's a look about that movie that I think is really fantastic. And, I understand how, if I was maybe a generation older than I am, I would have probably seen that as a kid, and that would have been a real touchstone for me. But I didn't come to it. I think when I was younger, it was just like, oh, that movie's so old. Like, how can that be good? Right. Like, I had never seen the original Godzilla either. You were mentioning like Peter Jackson had this project in development. And I like for a while there, I was thinking, why didn't they make it in the late 90s, like the blockbuster era of the late 90s? And then just reading about it. So the Godzilla movie, that terrible Godzilla movie where he eats Roger Ebert at one point,
It does.
that was coming out. Disney had a Mighty Joe Young remake that, like, I forgot that even existed. Tim Burton was developing his remake of Planet of the Apes, which I still haven't seen because I do love that original Planet of the Apes so much.
One of the worst like studio blockbusters ever made.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's probably the worst Tim Burton movie too, and I just don't ever feel like I need to bother with it.
No, it's not the worst Tim Burton movie because that's some stiff competition. It's not worse than like Alice in Wonderland, but
I didn't mind his Alice in Wonderland, but either way. I just thought it was interesting. Like, oh, right, this is why. And the studios were just afraid of making like a giant monster movie at that time. And, as you said, once he did the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the doors were open to him to do whatever he wanted. And this was, I'm glad you mentioned it, right? Like, I had always thought before we started talking about Peter Jackson and I kind of went back and learned a little bit about his origin story, I would have thought that Lord of the Rings was the passion project, right? Like that because he put so much of his life and his time and his money and his effort, because it had to be 3 movies and he insisted on that. And he did such a good job with it and just like so beautifully paid homage to Tolkien and what that story is all about. I would have figured that was the one he had been dying to make since he was like 8 years old. And it turns out, no, actually the one that he had developed before that, then he went off and did those. This is the one that really is the movie that he had been trying to make since he was a little kid. So I can't wait to talk about this one. I have very strong feelings about Peter Jackson's King Kong that I kind of don't have for the original King Kong. Gotcha. We were talking before the show about the 76, the Jeff Bridges one, which I think I did see as a kid, but I remember nothing about it. And now I kind of feel like I want to watch it again.
So the history of King Kong, there's the first one, that'll be the Marion C. Cooper movie, which, like you said, is like, kind of crazy popular, right? Son of Kong comes out the same year as that movie. Like it comes out 7 months later or something.
And The Most Dangerous Game, shot like back to back on the same sets. Yes. I love that movie. Like that's the one. If I have to pick one of the two of those for a desert island, it's going to be the Most Dangerous Game.
And then there's not another King Kong thing until King Kong versus Godzilla in 1962, which is they licensed out the character to Toho, the Godzilla company, and they made two movies in 62 and 67. I've seen Godzilla versus King Kong, that old Godzilla versus King Kong, when I was a kid. I don't really remember much about it other than I thought it was BS that King Kong won. Because I'm like, Godzilla is the size of a skyscraper. Godzilla's the size, King Kong's the size of at least 25 feet tall. But that was the first time they make King Kong real big, like they do in the modern ones. They made him like huge. And then it's not until 1996 there's I don't know how to say his name, John Guillermin movie, and then there's a movie 10 years later called King Kong Lives that he also directed.
80s, yeah. That's Sarah Connor. What's her name? Is in that Linda Hamilton.
Linda Hamilton, yeah.
I think I've seen that one too. That one's definitely not good.
Yeah, the 76 is it's a Dino De Laurentiis. He climbs the Twin Towers in that movie. It's modernized, right? It's set in the time in which it is made. It's not it's not a period piece. I remember it being just okay again, but I was a kid when I saw it because I was just like in love with monster movies, so I don't really have any real gauge on that movie. And then it really wasn't until 2005 and Peter Jackson's movie, that we got another King Kong iteration. I mean, obviously now there's like a franchise of King Kong going on. But when this movie comes out, obviously I am super stoked, right? It's like I loved the Lord of the Rings movies, like we talked about. And, I knew Peter Jackson. By the time this movie's announced, I know that Peter Jackson is like obsessed with King Kong. So it's like, oh, awesome. He gets to make the thing that he's really excited about. Can't wait to see what they do with it. Can't wait to see what he brings to it, right? And I remember when it came out in 2005, I really enjoyed it, right? I was like, I really like this. And then it was one of the first times that I really was like, I really like this, but like it seems like most people don't really like this. And it got reviewed pretty well, right? But the general like public sentiment was a little cool on it, right? And I think it's been like kind of largely forgotten in many ways in the 20 years since it came out. And, it made like $217 million domestically. It made like $600 million worldwide, which adjusted for inflation would be about like what Jurassic Park Rebirth made, this year, which is a movie that's been lauded for like, oh, like look at this box office performance from this movie, right? But back then King Kong was considered a disappointment because everyone expected it to do Lord of the Rings numbers because it was Peter Jackson, right? And so that's the main takeaway I remember from it. I watched it a few times in that era, always really liked it, and then basically haven't watched it probably in over 15 years, right? Like I really have not gone back to it. And so when I sat down to watch it this time, I was kind of like, okay, like how am I going to feel about this? That's how I really felt, because I was like, I have no clue watching it now how I'm going to feel about it, right?
Same thing for me, by the way. So I hadn't definitely, I bought it back in the day. Mm-hmm. And literally opened up the DVD. It was a DVD, not a Blu-ray. I bought it I think I got it as a gift in like 2006 or something. And it had been sitting on my shelf for the longest time, untouched, beautiful DVD, 2-disc set thing. Yep. And I opened it up and I was like, finally, I'm going to watch King Kong on DVD. So I did this time. But it was one of those things, because the whole time I was like, why didn't I go back to this? In all of those years, I was looking at this beautiful DVD case on my shelf and just never touched it. And, I was a little nervous, actually, that I was going to see this movie and be like, oh, this was actually a piece of crap. And I was just so drunk on Lord of the Rings back then that, and I didn't have the connection with it that you did in the early 2000s. But I loved those movies and I was a big Peter Jackson fan anyway. So I know I was really pumped for this and I remember really liking it. I went to the premiere. I had press passes for, not the Connecticut premiere. Lots of people lined up outside. It was a real cool event. So I was a little nervous to watch it again, to be honest, because I didn't want to dislike this movie that I had such warm feelings for back in the day, literally 20 years ago now.
And were your fears warranted, or did you end up enjoying it?
I absolutely love this movie.
That's great. Cool.
This movie has some problems. This movie has some maybe big problems, but there are so many things about it that are just wonderful and just make me so happy that I'm willing to overlook what are some pretty significant flaws in this. So seeing it, I think now, 20 years later, as an older person, I definitely see the holes in it, and there are lots of them.
Yes.
There are some things that I think maybe could have been done differently. There's some casting choices that I don't love the way I did back in 2005, but I had a goofy smile on my face for enough of this movie that I can confidently say, capital L, I love this movie. And it's another one that I can't wait. I don't think my daughter's 5, and I was like, I wonder how soon before we watch King Kong. And then the scene with the giant bugs happened, and I was like, we're going to wait a little longer. But
also, it's just so long. That's the problem with it. It's just very long.
Well, it's a hard PG-13, and it is, it's maybe a watch it in more than one sitting kind of movie, which the structure of King Kong really kind of nicely lends itself to.
It does,
kind of almost 3 movies in one.
That's one of the things I was going to say exactly.
Very distinctly. So, but I think we're going to wait on it. But I'm looking forward to my next viewing of it, unlike this time where I was just kind of nervous to watch it again. But that said, I think we're both going to be able to pick apart certain things tonight.
It's a movie that you can definitely pick apart for sure, and I think that, but I agree almost completely with your sentiment, which is that I started watching it and immediately I was like, no fucking movie looks like this. Yep. No movie, not even any movie Peter Jackson has ever made. The New York stuff at the beginning, the style of it, there's so much style across this whole movie. And that's the thing I was mostly struck by. I was like, this movie is weird. Like, it is a weird movie, and that is so cool to see in a movie that cost $217 million, right? Like, yes, I think there were some choices that were made, probably they're very in the moment of the era choices, I think, that were made, especially with casting, that we will talk about for sure. And I don't like to say this about movies because I think that like it's like sometimes a shitty way to critique a movie. I think there is a 5-star 2-hour movie inside this 3-hour movie. You know what I mean? Like there's just maybe it could be 3 hours if some of those casting choices were different. If there were some tweaks going on to some of those things, I think maybe it could work at 3 hours. But I'm just saying, when the movie that exists, I think there is 2 hours of like some of the best, and I don't say this lightly, some of the best adventure, action, epic filmmaking in this era, full stop, right? There are times the ape himself looks better than 99% of the stuff that gets put on screen now. It's astounding how good it looks, right?
Agreed.
And I think, it features truly one of the best screen performers of her era, Naomi Watts. And I think that like it really works for the movie, right? And I think like there's so much to love about it. We'll get into the stuff that I think we both think probably is a little squishy about it, right? But that's my beginning part of it. I just think like the style, the tone, the weirdness of it, I think is so interesting, and I just love that he cannot play anything safe. He just doesn't have it in him to play things safe. And there's just like some stuff that doesn't work here, like just filmmaking, not in some of the length, just like filmmaking tricks and ideas. But I'm like, good for you for going for it, man. Like, you could have definitely just like sat back on your haunches and been like, I'm just going to make this like a straight down the middle period piece with period filmmaking techniques and, that sort of like Joe Wright handsomely mounted looking movie. And this movie is Peter Jackson through and through. You know what I mean? And I just love that about it.
There's some very Joe Wright interiors in this movie, but some of the other stuff. When we get to Skull Island, that is very much Peter Jackson. I mean, we've been to Skull Island in a Peter Jackson movie before. Just kind of not quite on this scale. Yeah, this movie is so drunk on the idea of movies, and particularly of Hollywood, classic, old school, traditional Hollywood filmmaking. It's a love letter to that era, to those filmmakers, like the filmmakers of the original King Kong. There's like a throwaway reference to them, and Faye Ray, early in this in the dialogue. And like, clearly that's something, doesn't need to be there, but if you get it, you get it. It's one of those things that I just sort of love in a movie like this. But, that era of filmmaking, although I'm not as familiar with it as maybe I should be, but the idea that like people could just go to Hollywood in the 20s and 30s, you work your way up through the business, you know, you're not a nepo baby, you're a craftsperson, and then you become one of the greatest directors of all time. You know, that's kind of the John Ford story, right? Someone like that, and the makers of the original King Kong as well. And this movie kind of feels like a real, it's like a Valentine to that idea, you know, this like crazy, you know, the Carl Denham character, very clearly modeled on Orson Welles, is kind of the way it expresses that, both in a good way and in a bad way. But like, I do feel like there's something kind of being said about that maverick spirit of young Hollywood in this movie, and I love that about it, just above and beyond all the giant ape stuff. Yeah,
absolutely. You know, Jackson has I think a real connection. And I'm sure it's also Walsh and Boyens and everyone, you know, who's writing the movie with him. But for the romantic nature of the era and really the romantic nature of movies of that era, you know, and this like, we can talk about how effective it is. There is kind of two sweeping romances for Naomi Watts in this. I think one of them works really well and one of them does not, but I think that like he really loves like that type of filmmaking and that type of story. And one of the things too, I just, you know, I wrote down in my notes was that like the most refreshing thing about this, right, is that this movie is made. It's a huge movie, right? We talked about the budget a bunch. It took a long time to shoot. It was a lot. This is not, but it's not an IP play, right? This is not Peter Jackson going like, I'm setting up the next franchise for Universal Pictures, right? I've wanted to make this movie since I was 7, and I'm going to put everything I've ever wanted to put into a King Kong movie for 30 years into this movie. And I don't care if it's too long, because I'm never going to get a chance to do this again. This is not me. I'm putting it all out on the field, right? Like I'm not saving stuff for a sequel. I'm not saving stuff for a franchise down the line. I am making this movie.
Everything in it. Yeah. There
is
not an idea. I mean, and apparently there were. I was reading about like some scenes that they shot, some stuff that they left out. It's like, you left stuff out? Like so much is in this movie. Yeah. So many things that probably don't need to be in this movie. But yeah, I agree with you, right? It's King Kong dies at the end of this and it's over, right? Where it's cut to black, those beautiful Art Deco titles, you know, all the stuff you were talking about before. You see it right from the first seconds of this. I love stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, this movie it's a statement, and it doesn't suffer from like what a modern version. I mean, I saw the Skull Island, the one with John Goodman, where they go to Skull Island and find King Kong. It's like set in the Vietnam era. I think that movie is a ton of fun. I really like it, but it's such a franchise movie, and so clearly is meant to be like a prequel to all these modern ones. I haven't seen any of the more recent ones. And this is, you know, like you said, it is what it is, and you get what you get. You get a lot, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You get
it's
a lot.
Not the beginning of the King Kong cinematic universe, and I'm so happy about that.
Me too. And that was one of the things where I kind of there's portions of the movie where I was getting a little bit cynical about, not cynical, but being like, you don't need this scene like that. I have that idea in my head a couple times, but then there was that one where I was like, but this is just like what he wanted to do, right? He wanted to make this movie, and it's so, you know, relatively pure in that way, right? That he just wanted to make it. And I think you agree with me a lot of the time. It's like these directors, these people who have these visions, like sometimes you just got to let them do what they're going to do. And yeah, sometimes it's not all going to work. Sometimes you're not going to get the grand slam, you know, but like you have the chance of getting it, right? And it's so much better than like, you know, guaranteeing a double. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, like if you're going to make something like this, right, you should be going for the top of the top. You should be going for things we've never seen before. You know, you should be going for things that are going to leave people going like, wow, I can't believe I saw that happen, right? And this movie is full of those things, right?
Yeah. Yes. There's like about an hour of this movie where it's just that after that after that after that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's too much, right?
It is too much. That is the main too much portion of the movie for sure, to me.
But on the other hand, I don't know. I like, what do you cut? I'm not sure I want to cut any of it. Like, I think it works together collectively as like the whole is greater than the sum of its parts kind of thing.
I definitely agree with that sentiment. For sure.
It's like, how many giant creatures of how many different varieties can we throw at you in an hour and 10 minutes of film? And it turns out a shit ton of them.
A lot. And a lot of times it'll be, and they won't be very spaced out. They'll be done dealing with one set of creatures right into the next set of creatures, you know.
It is. And there was a moment when I laughed. It's we've seen so much of this, and then there's a shot with Naomi Watts. It's kind of a quiet moment, and then this giant like monitor lizard appears like out of nowhere, and then there's another one because of course there's more than one. And I was like, oh, well, okay, I guess we have those too. And then a couple of scenes later, we get the bats.
Yep. There's a lot going on in this movie. And you mentioned it's like 3 movies. It in some ways is 4 movies because like the opening New York sequence, then the boat sequence, then Skull Island, and then back to New York at the end, right? Like they're really so distinct, like, you know, in their beats and what they're trying to do. But let's talk about the casting, because we're going to get into the different scenes and everything like that as we go through, and there's plenty I want to talk about. But, you know, the original incarnation of this in like 1998, right, was like Kate Winslet and George Clooney were going to be like the people in it, which makes sense for that time. We're in 2005. This movie gets made. Obviously, it's starting up in 2003, and the cast is about the most 2003 cast you could possibly imagine. It's odd in that way, and a little bit for Peter Jackson, because like that's not usually what he does, right? He's not usually casting like the it people, right? And maybe it's just because he didn't have that pull previously, you know.
No,
but
Liv Tyler was the closest. We talked about that in the Lord of the Ring movie. She was the draw. She was the big star in those movies.
Yeah, but this movie stars, you know, Naomi Watts. We mentioned she's coming off of one. I think you probably agree with me. Like one of the best screen performances, probably of all time. I really believe this in Mulholland Drive. I think like she's like it is one of the most stirring and stunning screen performances of all time.
It's one of the great movies of all time.
It's true, absolutely. But she is a powerhouse in that movie. She struggled for a long time in her career. She had a moment very early on where it seemed like she was going to break out, and then it didn't work out. She was in Tank Girl. It didn't work out. That movie bombed. And then she was basically shunted for 10 years after that or more.
Naomi Watts is in Tank Girl?
Yeah, she's in Tank Girl.
It's Laurie Petty who played Tank Girl, right?
Yeah, it is. But she's like the Q or whatever. She's like the tech person who makes like gadgets.
I don't remember that at all. Okay.
Should
I go back and watch Tank Girl? Probably not, right?
No, but I will say this, stylistically, unbelievable, like really unbelievable looking movie. Like a lot of those 90s indie comic movies. Where's Laurie
Petty been also? Sorry, now you got me thinking about Tank Girl.
Gone too. She's gone too. But Naomi Watts struggled for a long time, you know, people, you know, it's not a Mulholland Drive podcast, but Mulholland Drive was supposed to be a TV show that got turned into a movie, right? So she got basically cast to be in a television show, turned into this movie, and obviously she gives one of the greatest screen performances of all time. Like I said, the one scene where she does like the audition with the old creepy actor guy is like one of the best performances in a scene I've ever seen, right? It's just like one of those things where and in that moment, people were like, holy shit, right? Because like she's fantastic. And obviously she's unbelievably gorgeous, right? So it's like, what have we been doing, right? Since then. And so then,
well, in a very old Hollywood sort of way too, which David Lynch used beautifully in that movie, and I think Peter Jackson uses perfectly in this movie also. Like, so cannot imagine anybody else in this role than
absolutely not. No, and she's like at this point, right? She does Mulholland Drive in 2001, 2002. She has The Ring, right? A certified huge hit, right, and a mainstream hit. So then, you know, it's like, you know, she's got the Oscar play. She's got the thriller that is hugely successful. She's in 21 Grams the next year. Which I have very mixed feelings about his whole filmography, but she's in that movie and she gets a lot of praise for it, right? She's in I Heart Huckabees the next year, right? She's working with all of these major directors who all seem to be problematic people, but
I'll go to bat for I Heart Huckabees though.
I think I Heart Huckabees is very good. And then she's in King Kong, right? This year, right? In 2005, like we're talking about. So obviously, you know, she is a slam dunk casting for this. Like you said, her look, her vibe. We'll talk about her performance as we go through the movie, but she is the best casting in the movie and, you know, obviously like elevates the movie in so many ways. Right.
Well, the supporting roles, I think, are very well cast. Also, they don't get as much screen time. Like in a 3-hour and 10-minute movie, whatever it is, like I could use a little more Jamie Bell, a little more Kyle Chandler. I think he's a lot of fun in this movie and he's not in it much.
again, of the time, right? We're talking about like Jamie Bell never broke out. It seemed like Jamie Bell was going to like be a guy. Didn't really happen for him. Obviously, he's a child star from Billy Elliot, and then sort of never really like, I think, makes that leap to full blown like he's gonna be a lot of movies. But he still works now. Kyle Chandler is in Friday Night Lights, right, when this is coming out. So Kyle Chandler is in the discussion, right, at the point. Thomas Kretschmann is in this, and I like Thomas Kretschmann a lot,
Me too, yeah.
So, yeah, the supporting cast is well cast, for sure. But we've got our three main leads, right? So we talked about Naomi Watts really quick. I think, I want to talk about the one that I think is divisive, but I like, which is Jack Black. I think, I like Jack Black in this movie quite a bit. I think that, his character obviously isn't the most complicated character in the world. I think the script lets him down a little bit at points. But I enjoy his performance in this movie. I don't know how you feel about him in this movie.
Yeah, he was the one that I had the toughest time with, because I remember seeing this in 2005. Like 2005, I was a huge Tenacious D fan. I still am. I love those guys, of course. But at the time, I was like obsessive. That's when their movie came out. No one saw it but me. But I love me some Pick of Destiny. I was listening to the albums all the time. That's my first job when I was writing for a little magazine in New Haven. Like that's what I was listening to all the time. My going away party from that job, we rented out a theater and we saw Pick of Destiny. So I was a huge Jack Black fan, and I remember thinking at the time, 2005, like this is a real performance that he's giving here, right? Like he's not just playing Jack Black in this movie, which you can't really say about almost anything else he had done up to this point. He is always, Tenacious D Jack Black. And then seeing it this time, I feel like he's kind of playing Jack Black a lot more. Like there's so many Jack Black isms in this character. And he's like the thing that took me out of the movie the most this time,
really?
I think. Yeah. And I remember distinctly thinking the opposite of that in 2005. But so you're saying the one that didn't work for you is Adrian Brody?
I think Adrian Brody is bad in this movie. And not in it's tough for me to say explain this, because I don't think Adrian Brody's a bad actor. Obviously not. I think he's a great actor with the right roles. But I think we are in an era where obviously he wins the best actor for the surprise best actor award for The Pianist.
Just a couple of years before this, yeah.
A couple of years before this, and I think Hollywood was like, well, he's the youngest actor ever won Best Actor. He's going to be a leading man in things. And they tried for 5 years to make him a leading man, and all of those movies were different degrees of failures for the most part. And then he went back to being to playing weirdos. And then I think that's where he belongs, right? I think that's he's very good at that. And and I think he takes himself very seriously. Obviously we could tell from the Oscars this year how seriously he takes himself. But I think that I think as romantic lead, he basically never works in a movie. And I think I think here and again, part of it is the script, right? Part of it is what his character, his function is, which is to basically just run away from things and do nothing, right? He doesn't really, what's his name? Jack, what the fuck is his name in this movie? Jack Driscoll.
Jack Driscoll, yeah.
If Jack Driscoll wasn't in this movie, tell me what would have been different.
Well, there'd be no love triangle between him and Naomi Watts and a giant monkey.
And a giant monkey, who I'm rooting for the giant monkey the whole time. I gotta be honest with you. But I'm just saying, and this is that's not Adrian Brody's fault, right? Yeah. But this is where my main sort of bumping against the movie happens, which is all this time we spent on the island with the dudes running around,
trying to save the damsel in distress. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm she doesn't need you to save her. Actually,
she's got King Kong, and he's pretty big fan of hers. Yeah, he's taken pretty good care of her, I would say.
He's definitely a wife guy, King Kong's a wife guy, and he wants to protect her. So it's for me, it's all of the scenes with Naomi Watts and the ape are so good. They are just either exciting or oddly emotional. You get oddly emotional watching them, and then they're but then Adrian Brody runs away from some bugs, and I'm okay, this is structurally cool. The effects are working. I like the mechanics of it, but my brain is can we just get back to Naomi Watts and the ape, And so
I agree, but I don't mind him as the romantic lead in this. I sort of like the idea. I think it kind of works for the character because he's not an action hero. He's a playwright. He's I love that, when we first see him, I think it's the first scene he's in when he's on the ship and he's writing the script and that's the kind of character he is.
Yeah.
I enjoy him in those kinds of moments, or when he's just like, he's in his cage down below, like in the hold of the ship where the animals are, full of camel shit and whatever.
I love that shot composition. I think that's
it's great.
So
Yeah.
cool.
Where all the ship is listing back and forth. I think that stuff gives me enough goodwill, and I enjoy that character so much there. You know, he's a nerdy writer guy. I'm kind of like that, right? I'm much more him than I am Kyle Chandler or Jack Black, this sort of iconoclast, you know, putting everybody in danger for his vision.
Yeah.
I guess I'm more of a Jack Driscoll, so I like the role. I like him playing that role. Mm-hmm. It's a romantic lead that's not like the typical Kyle Chandler romantic lead. Like he's playing a very specific type there. And
Which
I think
is Jackson's point, right? It's his whole thing he's doing.
Exactly. And I like that. I think that's a thing that works for me. But I get what you're saying, but I don't mind him.
It's more just like, I think the character, once they get off the ship, I like him in the ship portion of the movie. Once they get off the ship, don't real like all the stuff on the island with him. And it's partly because like, again, I'm saying that's the part of the movie that I most sort of like my attention starts to drift a little bit. Like when we're in those scenes, even though they're well made, look nice, you know, are good adventure action scenes. And I even like him a little bit. Like I think he's fine in the New York sequence too, where he's kind of like, he has a function, he's doing something, right? You know, I think it's more that. And I just like, but again, I just feel like Adrian Brody is much better at playing like damaged people who have like weirdness about them, and he is playing this character a little more down the center, right? He's trying to be a Hollywood, you know, guy, you know, in this movie, and I just think that's not the best use of his talents. I think that's really what it is.
That's fair, but this is not a movie that's supposed to be an acting showcase for him. It's supposed to be an acting showcase for Andy Serkis, and it is, and Naomi
Andy Serkis
Watts,
is doing his typical stuff.
Yep.
Are you talking about as the monkey? I'm even talking about the cook when he's like,
oh, no. I mean him as the monkey. Yeah, I almost forgot he was in this in a human role. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so that's my only thing about Brody in this movie. And, you know, it's one of those things we talked about like way back, right, where we're talking about Michael Sheen in Tron Legacy, right, and how there are certain actors who can take a role that doesn't have a lot there and just make it a little bit more in movies like this. And I don't think Adrian Brody is one of those guys, right? I think he's just like, you know, he's like, he wants to play the reality of the character, and he wants to, you know, and it leads to him just being kind of like, yeah, I'm the serious one here. And it's a little bit like, okay, but that's not the movie you're in a little bit to me. You know what I mean? And so like, I think that's why it bumps up against it a little bit, but it's not like a terrible performance. It's just, it's one of the things where it's like, it doesn't bring anything to me. Right. And the reason I still kind of like Jack Black in it is because he is playing like a heightened sort of character, right? Who, like you're talking about, like he makes all the worst decisions. Never in this movie does he make a correct decision. There's not one correct decision that he makes the whole time.
Doesn't, but he's very endearing in a Peter Jackson sort of way.
Yeah,
like
absolutely,
he's getting this shot no matter what it takes. If 16 people die all around him, I'm making my movie the way I want to make my movie.
Cranking that camera.
Yeah. And like you can't. I mean. I like that Peter Jackson allows us to dislike Carl Denham because I do feel like there's a real kinship between the two of them. Yeah. This easily could have been, you know, this movie could have been written and conceived where like the filmmaker really is the hero, you know, of the story. And he's not, you know, everything bad that happens in this movie happens because of Carl Denham. Mm-hmm. But boy, is he charismatic, and boy, do we kind of believe him when he's like, I'm going to make this movie for that guy that I just got killed, and I'm going to send the proceeds to his family. And like,
he says it twice.
Well, because a lot of people die. He gets a lot of people killed, and then, you know, gives this stirring speech afterward. And I'm like, all right, yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, one of the things about this movie, right, I think that does hold it back from greatness is, you know, we were able to talk with Lord of the Rings, right, about a lot about what the movie was about more than just like its story and plot functions, right? And I think this movie very much is just like what happens is kind of what happens, and like that there's a little bit of like, you know, greed and like human, you know, destructive tendencies and stuff like that, which I think Jackson is sort of playing around with for sure. But
yeah, there's themes here, but they're, you know, they're a little bit nebulous. They're not really well articulated. But again, I mean, it is classic Hollywood in that way, right?
Absolutely,
like this is not a message movie in any way. And Lord of the Rings isn't either. It just, you know, that was there. That's kind of ingrained in the story.
Totally,
you know, King Kong could kind of be about anything or nothing in some sense.
Exactly.
You know, this isn't a movie that's really arguing against animal cruelty or anything like that.
No.
It's not really.
Because that do kill a bunch of people.
Yeah. Yes.
So I can't really blame
Well, he
for
straight
killing him.
murks the nicest character in the movie, Hayes. He just like
does.
chucks him off a cliff.
He does.
Like, that's our romantic lead, bro.
Yeah,
I mean, King Kong is like, you can't have him just kill the nicest guy in the movie.
yeah. And he's just picking up blonde women and throwing them across New York City at the end.
Okay, can we talk about that though? Because I thought that was so funny.
So
he
really
picks
funny.
them up. Yeah, so he's picking up all these women. He thinks they're Naomi Watts. They all kind of look like Naomi Watts. He doesn't throw them, but he also doesn't like set them down gently. It's like it's like the perfect halfway point between those two things, where he kind of casts them aside, but like, you know, they're probably breaking a couple bones, but they're not getting splattered on the pavement. And I love that choice.
The first woman in the theater definitely is dead. He chucked her across that theater.
You mean the actress that's in the show?
Yeah, the actor.
Yeah.
He chucked her across that theater.
Yeah, but the rest of him, he's rough, but he's not too rough. I like that.
No. But he does kill a bunch of people on the street.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the body count's real high in this movie. It's one of those movies that makes you want to kind of not think about it. But then Denham says it, like when he presents the show at the end, he's like, 17 people died for me to bring you this. And like, oh, right, yeah, that was a lot of people.
Yeah. So let's rewind. Let's go back. I mean, we talked about the casting a little bit. I agree with you. I like the supporting cast. I always feel like, Thomas Kretschmann and stuff like that. Someone who could have had a longer career in a different era of Hollywood would have had a nice long career playing like, villains in movies, for a long time. I mean, he is in like a couple of the Avengers movies, right? He's, God, what's his name? I can't remember his name, but he's like, in Avengers 2, he's like the guy who like, has the Elizabeth Olsen prisoner or whatever. He has like the staff or whatever. But and Jamie Bell, like you said, I like all the supporting cast, quite a bit. But we open in New York, and
this opening sequence is so good, right?
I love this opening sequence.
We talked about the world building at the beginning of Fellowship of the Ring and how amazing that is, and we're talking about thousands of years of this fantasy kingdom. But like, this is kind of doing that for Depression era New York in a way that is just as effective and just as compelling and tells you as much without, it's beautifully done. I think because the first shot of this is an ape in the zoo, is an orangutan or something like that. We're like looking at a primate face, and then we go from there to like these amazing shots of that holds up wonderfully. I think it does, the period New York stuff, and then interspersed with that we start to see vaudeville, and there's this wonderful contrast between the silliness, the sort of frivolity of vaudeville shows, and the wealthy people, skyscrapers going up, and poor people in soup lines and picking apples out of the garbage. Like the visual storytelling and the editing and the music, it's this Al Jolson song, it's so well done, and it's like not as big a thing as he's doing in Fellowship of the Ring, but like he's just so good at this kind of
he is really good at it,
shorthand storytelling that, and really, do we need all of that in King Kong? Probably not.
No,
like the way, like the Depression era setting, because we're going off to Skull Island and we know it. That's really what this movie is. It's maybe unnecessary, but it's just, I forgot about that, right? Like having not seen this in 20 years, I was like, wow, we're really going to set this up, and we're really going to get to know the Ann Darrow character and where she comes from, and the world that she sort of lives in, that we know her function is to be taken out of. I really loved that. I really was impressed by that.
Yeah, me too. And I think what's great about the way it looks is that it doesn't look real on purpose, right? It's meant to be romantic and evoke like a vibe and a feeling, like a very stylized New York, right? The way I love like the almost Janusz Kaminski light, like the kind of, that kind of like filtered light, and
the like pastel colored skies. And there's like the color palette in this movie is incredible. Andrew Lesnie, who shot, I think, the Fellowship of the Ring. He did one of them.
He shot all three Lord of the Rings.
There was like other people that worked with him on the other two. Didn't we talk about that?
No, he shot all three. He shot all three of the Lord of the Rings movies. Lesnie did, for sure.
It was the editor. They brought in different editors.
Yeah, they brought in editors.
Because they had a lot of work to do there.
A lot of editing to do on those movies, but. Yeah, Lesnie shoots this movie. It looks gorgeous. Like what I did really remember, but didn't remember that it was from this movie, is that shot of the bridge, like with the cars coming off the bridge right onto the road. Like I was like, that shot was in my brain. I was like, I remember this shot. I didn't remember it was from this movie, which was so funny. But yeah, I love all that stuff. I love like I also just love, and this is just because I love movies and I love old movies, I just love seeing actors dancing and shit on stage doing stuff, you know, and like that whole vaudeville thing at the beginning was great. Her doing all her like physical comedy and dancing and stuff like that. I just love, you know, stuff like that. I love like overdone portraits of, you know, Hollywood bigwigs and what they are thinking and doing, you know.
Oh, those scenes are so much fun. When we
Yeah,
first meet Carl Denham, love it. Absolutely love it.
Because too, I love Jack Black's hairstyle in this movie. I think it.
It's a wig. Did you know it's a wig?
I didn't know it was wig. It's a great wig. Then.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess Peter Jackson didn't like the way he actually cut his hair, so he made him wear a wig for the entire thing. But yeah, I like it too.
It really sells like the era and the period. It really makes him look like he's part of that period. He really fits nicely.
Well,
with
it
that
is very
hairstyle.
Orson Welles too.
Yes, absolutely it is. Yeah, but it really fits nicely into that world, you know, and makes him really place it there. Yeah, and like I think.
Oh, we didn't mention Colin Hanks. I love Colin Hanks. He's in this movie. Not
he
enough. He was the one where I was like, him and Jamie Bell, like, can we get more of those two guys? I love that. Like anything those guys are in, I want to see more of them.
Basically, Colin Hanks just stands there being like, are you sure? Like with an are you sure look on his face. That's really, he doesn't really say it. He just has that look on his face the whole time. You know, yeah, I love this opening sequence. I love this idea of like, you know, both of our first two characters that we meet, right? The Naomi Watts character, the Jack Black character, both sort of being forced towards this, like, you know, I guess, I don't even know what you call it. Like, you know, nudie, the strip club.
Burlesque house.
It's a burlesque house. Yeah, it's a burlesque house. And sort of finding each other there, right? And it's so rare in movies where they have like a person see another person and they get hit by this bolt of lightning that's like, it can't be anybody else. And you're like, and you buy it. Mm-hmm. But that moment where he sees Naomi Watts, I'm like, I buy it, man.
The like, reflection in the glass door. Right, because he's there first. She walks up behind him, and it's beautifully staged. Peter Jackson's good. He's a filmmaker. He knows what he's doing.
She looks great in that hat. She has those eyes, you know, like, and like I totally buy it. Like, you know,
I love also the diner scene, you know, so he buys her food and tries to talk her into being in his movie. And she's so doing like the classic Hollywood, like the performance style. And we don't see that through all of this. I mean, my one knock against Naomi Watts' performance is that she's doing something very specific here that she kind of gets away from later on. And maybe that's the character, right? Because she is an actress. Yeah. Maybe she's kind of putting on airs a little bit, but like, you don't know me, Mr. Denham, like that whole thing. Like I really enjoy that so much here. And we don't see it as much later on, where she plays it a little bit more naturalistically, but that sort of old-fashioned performance style that she does here, she's really good at it. And like, it makes me want to see her in more things where she gets to do that.
Yeah, I mean, which is such a big part of her Mulholland Drive performance too.
Yeah, right? Yeah, she does the throwback stuff so well.
Yeah, very, very well. I like the diner scene. I like the vibe of that scene. I like, and again, you're saying like Jack Black. You know, obviously, he's using some of his usual tricks here. He's not, you know, he's not like a but he's got like his, you know, he's using his charm. But he is very charming, right? And he is very good at being disarming. But he does. And has always had, you know, a little bit of darkness to his style, right? And I think he's letting that really come forward here a lot more, like the like turning his sort of charm in on itself, right? For ill, you know, and
well, he's a trickster, right? Like he's the archetypal trickster where he's, and you know, you buy it. I agree with that, right? Like that's why, you know, he's not the most attractive man in the world, but like when he's with a woman in a movie that is like mind-bogglingly gorgeous. Like him and Naomi Watts are not a romantic pairing in this movie. Not at all. Yeah. But there are movies with him in it where there is something like that and you sort of buy it. Like he can sort of charm the pants off of anyone. And that works so well for this character because he is such a huckster. And like this whole sequence is really, you know, the Carl Denham side of it is just, how can I bullshit literally everyone, get them on this boat and get the boat to leave to go to Skull Island?
Yeah, I know.
Like, and you know, through every part of it, like everything is just like, you know, the cops are coming after you. We've got no money. Like you're supposed to be going to jail. No, I'm going to go make my movie, and everyone's going to come along with me. And you sort of buy that everyone, even Driscoll, Adrian Brody's character, when he's writing him the check and he writes $2,000 instead of 2,000, like that whole thing. I love all that stuff. Yeah,
me too. I like all that stuff. I think all of this stuff really works. I like that, you know, in that scene where he's like, you know, if you just come with me to this thing, and she's like, she automatically thinks like like he's trying to like, like pay her for sex or whatever. And he's like, no. That's not at all what I'm trying to do.
That's not the kind of man I am. What kind of man are you? I love that.
Yeah. So much worse.
Actually, now that you mention it, you're right.
I guess, they go to this boat, right? I love the way the dock looks. I love how it looks like, it does sort of look like a backlot. It looks like a set, right? I think on purpose, right? He's trying to evoke these kind of old style things. I love the look that Naomi Watts gives right before she decides to actually get onto the boat. Like, it's such a great performance moment. And this is why you cast people like her, because her eyes tell the whole story. She doesn't say a single word.
Yep.
And you get everything that's going through her head in that moment. And like, that's also something to say about, the director and the writers knowing in that moment, she's not going to say anything, right? We're not going to have a moment where, we're just going to let the performance, carry us, through this moment. I really like that too. Like you mentioned him keeping Driscoll on the boat. I think that's really a nice little scene. It's got a little bit of that old Hollywood, like farce stuff going on, I'm like, Jack, you could jump off the boat. Like, it's not that far away from the shore.
Well, if he really wanted to go back, you would have jumped. I love that too.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we're all thinking it, right? And I think Jackson, they're not stupid writers. Like, no, people are thinking exactly that, right?
This is in a lot of ways, it's a very good script.
It is. Yeah.
I think structurally, some places it fails, but in terms of just the dialogue and the way these scenes are constructed, more of it works than doesn't. I think by a pretty big stretch.
Yeah. Jackson pulls up. I like the boat sequence. I think it's probably a little too long, right? We probably a little too much, but
it is. But I love being on a boat. I love a tramp steamer. I love like the era. All of this stuff. This like pre-World War II. We don't see this much in movies anymore. And I just, the romance of like traveling on an ocean liner or traveling on a tramp steamer or something like that. The adventure of going to a place where like, it isn't all over. Like no one knows about it. Like there's something very romantic about that. And I think Peter Jackson is really drawing on that for a lot of this movie. So I don't mind this boat sequence at all. I'd actually let it go longer. Like I was almost a little bit sad when they got to Skull Island because I was like, oh, I kind of remember what happens from here on out. Like I kind of want to hang out with the crew of this boat a little bit longer. Yeah.
I like how they do. I do love that Carl has got that grind in him, right? He's like, we're going to shoot the whole time on the boat. Like, I'm using all of my time and assets to do this stuff. You mentioned Kyle Chandler. I think Kyle Chandler is very funny in this movie. I think he's, I think they do a good job, right, of using the fact that he looks like he should be he should be an adventure hero from the 30s, to their credit in this movie. I love Kyle Chandler. He's one of those guys who I always felt like had the chance to be bigger than he was, outside of TV, a great TV actor and had a lot of success there.
A solid career though.
Yeah, he's sure.
And the film work that he's done. But yeah, he rarely gets a role like this one where he does get to kind of play up. There's this great moment where he puts up his own posters in his stateroom on the ship and someone defaces them. Somebody like draws a mustache on him and he like sees it and then he looks in the mirror, he puts the comb up and he's like, yeah, hey guy. Really, really fun moment. I also like the production design of this is so good. Like the posters for his movies tell you so much about him and this era, there are these like he's these very like rough and tumble characters that kind of he's the kind of character that like slaps women in movies at that time and you just go along with it. You can tell he's that kind of guy and he is that kind of guy in real life too. Well, not that he does anything like that in the movie, but we know he's kind of capable of that. And he has a moment later on, we'll talk about it, but there's this great line that he has later that it's just like movies never do this, and I like that so much.
Yeah, I think I like it's so funny. Like there's that one scene though where, they're like looking at the map and the clues and it's like, fuck. And Peter Jackson goes into that weird, like,
the slow-mo thing. What is that? I don't like that at all. Yeah.
The dragging frame, the drag.
It's something with the shutter speed. Yeah. It looks terrible.
It looks bad.
Like, it's the second worst looking thing in the movie. We'll get to the first pretty soon, but
he's been doing that since he started.
There's a lot of that in Lord of the Rings too.
Yes, but
it's used better there because it is it's more of a fantasy world. Like almost if you're seeing a magical vision, it might look like that. In this, it looks like somebody's just messing with the shutter speed on the camera and like don't do that.
Yeah. That's one of the things where I'm like, he's going for something. It doesn't really work here.
There's a lot of it in this the boat sequence, and then he never does it again, and I'm pretty thankful for that.
He does it right at the beginning of Skull Island with the girl, the pointing girl.
But after that, no more.
No more. He doesn't do it after that. And I think that's just, once again, he just is not content to make it shoot it normally, edit it normally. He always feels like he has to do something more, right? And I think he's very much a maximalist director.
Extra. He's
in
very
that
extra.
Way. He's very extra that way.
It's a millennial slang term that I like a lot, particularly when we're talking about stuff like this. It works. Extra and mid are the only ones I feel comfortable using because they describe so many things.
It's true. Like, he didn't need to have this like crazy candlelit, bear cage in the hold where, Adrian Brody's typing on his typewriter. But in that case, it works, right? It's like a very cool, interesting like set for him to shoot that stuff on. I like the kind of montage where like Naomi Watts is doing her little like dance with the crew and stuff like that.
Yeah, her and Jamie Bell are having a nice little moment there. It's very Titanic. I like that a lot. This movie, we got to talk about this because one of the 4-star reviews of this movie is Lulu Mennick of the New York Post. And he compares this pretty heavily to Titanic, and I think they're very different movies.
Yes, they're incredibly different movies.
We'll have to get to that, but yeah.
Very different movies.
He's not the only one that mentioned that, and I was like, no, I don't think you're quite seeing this the way it actually is.
I think it's the ship stuff, and I think it's also like the romantic nature of the movie, I think, is what people are kind of grabbing onto in those ways, but obviously I totally agree. They're not even close to being similar at all.
There's a level of camp to King Kong throughout the entire thing.
Yes.
And I forgot a lot of that, right? Like I guess I sort of remembered this as more of a straightforward, almost a Jurassic Park type movie that just happened to be a period piece. But it's pretty self-aware in a lot of ways.
Very self-aware.
That I don't remember. I mean, I'm sure I noticed it the first time, but this time, I guess that wasn't a thing that stuck with me. Some of the other stuff did. And seeing it this time, it's real tongue in cheek in a lot of ways. Like Titanic is not that. Titanic is very self-serious for what it is. And this movie kind of knows what it is and is having a lot of fun with that. And I don't know. I don't really get the comparison. I understand the superficial comparison.
It's a very superficial comparison. That's what I was trying to say. It's a very superficial comparison. This movie, and I think that's part of the reason why people were kind of cool on it at the time, right? It's like, we watch Lord of the Rings, and if you're really looking at it and you're really examining Jackson, there you can see the Jackson stuff in it, like in these ways, like he slips in a little bit of the tongue-in-cheek stuff here and there. But this is much more of like pre-Lord of the Rings, like, I'm a little cheeky bastard. I want like a lot of jokes in there, and like I don't take things particularly seriously. It has more in common with
The Frighteners and Dead Alive than it does, I think, with Lord of the Rings.
Absolutely, it does.
There are similarities there too, but I think it is. You're right. It's more of the Peter Jackson that we thought we knew. Well, then he goes and throws a Heavenly Creatures at us, so he can do all of those things.
Yes, absolutely. But even Heavenly Creatures, it has the Jackson weirdness to it that I think it's not as present in Lord of the Rings. It's in Lord of the Rings. It's not as present. It comes back here again, right? He's like, okay, I'm back. Now this is like my playground now. I'm going to do my stuff, and he's much more like unbridled by the source material that he, I think, wanted to sort of honor with Lord of the Rings. And that's not what he's doing here, right? And I think like, again, but when he really shines in any sense of the word is like when you get into that, like, when they get into the fog and when they get into like getting through the rocks onto Skull Island, he's so good at these sort of like adventure escape sequences and the mechanics of them. And once again, not making them, the ship doesn't get busted up. It doesn't get broken, right? It doesn't make it. It has like this weird middle place that it's stuck. And I like that a lot. And then once they get onto Skull Island, like the set design and stuff is unbelievable when they're in like
it's incredible. And he makes a point. He does this all the time in Lord of the Rings too. These overhead sweeping like crane shots where you see the entire location, you see where everything is situated, compared to everything else. Like there's a great shot that takes us from the boat, just the first shot of the wall on Skull Island. And then the thing we talked about in Fellowship, and I think some of the other movies too, there's always something for scale in those shots. Like there's always some birds flying around or something, so you can tell the immensity of it. But this incredible, and it's got to be all CGI or mostly CGI, but this sweeping shot that takes us from the boat in the water all the way past the wall to where, Kong lives, the settlement that's there, the natives that are there. I love that shot so much. I mean, it
Yeah.
still looks great. It brings you into this location in such a beautiful way. And then you don't need to do it again, right? Now
No.
we know that that's there. Now we know what that looks like. We can tell the distances these characters have to travel, which I thought he did a great job in particularly Return of the King with. You know, the shots that link up the two locations there. I mean, if you're going to make an adventure movie like this, and you can do it, like in the 30s, you couldn't do that, right? Now you can, and he makes a point to do it, and I love that. You know, you really feel like you're there, as silly as a lot of it is. You know, he makes the location believable in some sense, and that's important.
Yeah, I think I will say this. I was not totally comfortable or psyched about like the depiction of native people in the movie. They looked like orcs. He made them look like orcs. You know, I think like, you know, you could have gone.
The little kid though. The first one they see,
the pointing little kid, great.
It is a great reveal, and that's a great shot.
Yes, because I think it's, you know, we've gotten like the Moria, like this is a tomb, like sort of thing, and then there's a person just standing there, right? You know, so I think he could have done more to update that in some way, you know, not make them just like insane. like they're just insane. They're monsters, basically. They're much more monsters than the monsters are in the actual, you know, on Skull Island. But I think it looks really cool, and I think they do a lot of cool stuff other than like the weird frame rate stuff he does in this.
I don't know if we want to get to this. I mean, I don't know how slowly we're taking this, but the couple of shots where they sort of pole vault their way onto the ship.
I want to talk about
is that awesome.
So fucking cool. I was like, totally forgot about that sequence, and it started and I was like, oh my God, this looks so cool. Like,
yeah. And I'm like mad at myself for not remembering that, because it's awesome. Like, it's one of my favorite things I think I've ever seen in a movie like this, and forgot all that. It's very like Fury Road almost.
Yeah. And once again, one of the things where you're like, man, this guy just knows how to make a movie. Like, you know, like this is, again, it's this little thing. I've never seen it before. I've never seen it since.
It's not important in the grand scheme of this movie at all, but it's amazing. That whole sequence is amazing. Yeah,
absolutely. You know, and I will say this, we're at this point in the movie, we're about an hour into the movie. We have not seen King Kong yet.
A long way to go. Yeah. We barely know that King Kong is even part of this. Well, we do see the skull rocks in the water.
We do, yes. The huge, you know, skull rocks.
They look like monkey skulls. Yeah.
They look like monkey skulls. Yes, they absolutely do. You know, the whole, and and now we get into a very like operatic, melodramatic, like, you know, sequence of stuff that's happening, including like the Heart of Darkness analogy that's happening, where he's like reading the book, you know, and reading out passages.
This is an adventure story after all.
Yeah. He's like, no, it's not, Jimmy, or whatever. Who is that guy, by the way? Who plays that guy?
I don't know, but I really like him, and I really like that character. Yep.
He was great. Is that Hayes?
Yeah.
Evan Park is his name. Okay. He was great. I thought he was awesome in the movie, you know, and I think all this really works. She gets taken, right? It's really scary, really intense.
The thing, the where they're going to sacrifice her, that whole thing, the gorge with this like bridge thing that she's strapped to that like falls down over the gorge. It's amazing. It's such a cool, and the way Kong is shown, like this is our first real glimpse of Kong. And the lighting is so perfect because we see him, but we kind of don't really see him. Like, it's a monster reveal that's not quite like the full-on monster reveal. It's very carefully done. It's really good. The only thing is, I love the design of all of this. And I'm like, okay, so this gorge is here because Kong can't cross the gorge. And then later in the movie, he just like runs and jumps and goes right over the gorge like Super Mario. And I'm like, oh, okay, so that's not what that was at all. Kind of lame.
Well, because I think what you kind of come to learn, right, is I don't think the gorge is really to keep Kong out. I think it's to keep all the other stuff out. Because I don't think Kong would have really much interest in them other than this thing that they're doing. Because he has his own whole thing he's doing, you know, and he seems like the least dangerous. I mean, obviously he's like the most powerful, most likely, but like he's the one he's not going to go hunting for humans, you know, in this town or whatever, you know?
No, but I thought that was the point, right? Like if they don't give him a sacrifice every once in a while, he'll just.
Yeah, I think that is but I think that's why they give him the sacrifice, because if he couldn't come over, why would they bother giving him a sacrifice? Right? Like they wouldn't have to sacrifice anything to him if he couldn't make it over the gorge, you know?
No, so I guess.
You know what I mean?
Now we're talking about the mechanics of this.
But I'm saying I think the reason they sacrificed to him is because he's the only thing that can really pierce that gap, right? The T-Rex couldn't get across that gap or whatever.
Or the Brontosauri.
or the
monitor lizards or the bats. Yeah. Well, I guess the bats probably
could, I guess, but I guess they don't have much interest. Though it doesn't look like a good place to live, like in that little rocky town that no one looks like they're having a good time living there. It's the whole point, like, you guys are sure you just don't want to, like...
Well, there's no giant bugs, so they got that going for them.
Sure, but they all just live in, like, rock houses, like rock lean-tos. And, like,
I'd rather be there than anywhere where there might be some of those giant bugs.
I agree with that for sure. But yeah, we get to see Kong. We see most of him, not all of him. You can already tell, like, it looks really good.
It's such an incredible special effect. I mean, there are some things in this movie that are starting to look a little bit dated, and we'll get to. Sure. There's an entire sequence of this that I remember really liking in 2005, and now I'm like, ooh, that looks very, very dated and very not good anymore. That doesn't hold up at all. But Kong is perfect.
Yes.
His face, the fur. I feel like you can smell King Kong in this movie. Yeah. He's got like the way he's always got like this cloud of insects kind of around it. It's so beautifully detailed, so well realized. It is like, I mean, I can't think of a CGI creature that looks as good. I mean, since then, what's been better?
It's really tough to say. You know, like, I think, like, you can probably throw, like, a Thanos in there.
They've made King Kong movies since this,
It's
right?
true.
And they don't look as good. Not nearly as good.
No, I mean, those movies, they look great, don't get me wrong, but, like, there's just something... there are different priorities going on, right? Because
like the Planet of the Apes movies, the series they're doing now.
Those look amazing.
That's fantastic CGI as well.
Yeah,
but like something amazing. Like the imposingness of this Kong, like it's, I guess in this sort of realm, I can't think of anything that's held up. They've made so many Jurassic Park movies since this, and they all look like shit.
Well, it's because the other thing too is it's not just the physical nature of him. It's the fact that he's a character that you end up caring about is what I think makes it so impressive. The facial stuff is, I think, really like the secret to why this thing is so good, because, you know, he has a whole personality without speaking that you can glean, right? Like, you're like, I feel like I know this character. Like, he feels like a character. He's not just a monster, right? And like, I think that's what's so important about this.
He gives a look to Adrian Brody in the final sequence of this movie that is like, it's one of the best things in the movie, because it's not like that psychotic monster anger sort of energy. It's like a very human, like, oh, I fucking hate this guy. It's so perfect. And I mean, it has to be just Andy Serkis. Like, it's a great performance.
It's a great performance.
He had, you know, the motion capture in this is as good as it gets. And oh man, like, he has so much personality, particularly when we get later in the movie. We get to see a little bit more of him. It's incredible.
Yeah. So, you know, they do a thing where they very much are trying to, like, really keep you in Anne's perspective when he first gets taken. You're very close up on her. It's a lot of running around. I think some of this doesn't totally hold up, right? Where, like, she's kind of like, looks like sort of like a doll that he's holding. Yeah. Right. And sometimes, and you know, I always try to suppress this in my brain, but sometimes my brain is like, she would already be dead. Like, that's the amount of
seconds.
strength.
I thought the same thing in the sequence.
Her neck would have been broken in a second.
Oh God, yeah. She doesn't even have whiplash. He puts her down, and she's like pretty much fine.
I'm gonna do she does a little dance number for him.
Yeah,
you know?
I'm still in prime vaudeville shape.
She is. Yeah. So, but you know, again, I try to suppress that stuff. You know, I think, you know, they really want to keep. They're trying to hide the full reveal as much as possible, right? But once you get the full reveal and you get that first real scene, right, but where she's kind of dancing, you know, for him or whatever. First, she's pretending to be like asleep or whatever, and he's like eating a branch or whatever, and then like he's kind of looking behind him to see if she's awake, and she keeps pretending, and then she dances for him, and like he starts laughing or whatever. I'm like, I remember at the time being so impressed by it, but even now watching it, I'm like, this is unbelievable what they're doing here from both a digital perspective and also just Naomi Watts, who's obviously just fucking dancing in front of nothing, or Andy Serkis. Like, for it to be it's as good as it is.
The setting here, they're like on a cliff. He's got this like cliffside cave. It's like thousands of feet up. We're seeing the ocean and the sunset behind. Again, this like very beautifully lit, like pastel colored sky. And she's like performing. It's like such an adorable scene. And there's been so much like horror leading up to this moment. You know, all the stuff with the natives is pretty dark, pretty grim. You know, there's a dead guy on the boat and blood everywhere. And, you know, they're clubbing people's skulls in. And then you get like, this is a Pixar scene, you know, kind of like right in the middle of this movie. And she plays it, you know, perfectly. Plays it perfectly. I mean, it's a really nicely conceived scene. And look, this is a movie that doesn't need this. You know, this is a movie that could just be spectacle, action, drama, horror, you know, all of that stuff. But like, no, we're going to slow things down. It is a slow and we're hitting pause here to kind of develop this relationship. And the fact that, you know, it's a brilliant piece of writing, you know, what Anne decides to do to kind of placate this creature is the only thing she knows how to do. I make people laugh, as she says earlier on.
Yeah.
And she does that. You know, she uses her performance skill to like kind of win him over. It's beautiful. It's it works so well. And you could see this going so poorly, you know.
Yeah.
She's dancing in front of a giant CGI monkey, and yet we're invested in it.
We are.
I'm smiling the entire time.
Yeah, because we care about her, and because the animation is so expressive on the effect. Like,
because it takes him a while. She doesn't win him over right away. He has to kind of like warm up to what she's doing, and we see that whole process. You know, it's in the facial expressions, it's in the movement.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, and then it's like, you know, there's a lot of stuff happens between this, but when she like runs away and he eventually like gets her back, then when he just kind of stands there and like turns his head away and is like, or whatever, like he's like, you know, where he's like sort of like he's sort of mad at her, you know, that she ran away. You know,
I thought he was just kind of over her shtick at that point. It's like, I've seen this before. Give me something new. What else you got?
Yeah. But I just really like that. I think it really gives you a sense of this being a character that you can care about, right?
Yep.
And I think that's Jackson's main goal here, right? And we talked about this when we talked about Lord of the Rings. He's never content for it to be spectacle, right? That's not ever what he does. Even when it doesn't work the way that we want it to, he always wants it to be about the person or the humanity or the character that is being addressed, right? That's the important thing to him. He loves the spectacle, but the spectacle always has to be around a person or a character. And I really appreciate that about this movie. I think that's one of the things that really keeps it together, holds the movie together, is scenes like the ones we're talking about right now. You know, while this is going on, obviously we get like the party of people from the ship going to look for Anne. And I think the scene you're going to talk about that you're mentioning that you loved back then that looks terrible now is the dinosaur chase.
Oh boy.
Scene.
Yeah. I remember being so into that scene. It's so very early 2000 CGI here. Like nothing has any weight to it. It's a fun sequence, right? It's these brontosauri. They're running through a canyon. They end up like tripping over each other and kind of falling onto creating like a pile of dinosaurs. It's such a fun idea, but it has this very sort of, you know, almost gelatinous sort of feel about it. Like they don't feel like they have any bones. They feel like they're just kind of, you know, very loose limbed, and it doesn't really work at all. I think the other problem is the green screening, because the characters are kind of like
compositing stuff is really
running. The compositing is terrible. Like they're running. I mean, not that it's terrible.
It's not terrible, but it
doesn't hold up. They're running between their legs.
Yeah,
and it's just, you know, you can tell that they are not in the same frame together. And I never feel that way with the Kong stuff, right? Like when Kong is on screen and someone's interacting with Kong, like you feel like they really got a 25-foot giant ape there.
Yeah,
these dinosaurs just do not work at all.
The thing is, like, it's Jackson. You know, we talked about a little bit with Return of the King. You know, pushing what is possible for him to do at this moment. He really wants to do this scene, but the processes, the techniques, the technology doesn't exist to make what he wants to do look good yet.
And so he goes full CGI with it. Like and there's a lot of CGI in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, right? But like,
there is, yeah.
But you know, one of the major criticisms, and we'll get to this when we get to the movies, the Hobbit movies, it's almost all CGI, right?
Yeah,
like there's nothing that is practical and physical. And to me, I saw this scene in King Kong and I was like, oh, that's the turning point, right? Like that's when this thing that he was so good at starts to curdle a little bit. Yeah. And thankfully he gets it back to finish this movie, because there's a lot of this movie still left to go. But you could kind of see that like kind of weightless, cartoony, not very well composited CGI happening here, that like, you know, everyone I know who hates the Hobbit movies, that's one of the first things they bring up. I don't hate those movies, by the way. We'll get to that.
No, I don't hate them either. I don't hate them. We're going to get to them.
But there are people who do. And one of their major criticisms is the CGI is just overused, overdone. They don't look like the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, and specifically because of that.
Yeah.
Not that Smaug is, he's a pretty amazing creation. The same way
There are
Kong
things
is.
in those movies when we get to them that look amazing, right? And
Right.
we'll talk about that stuff when we get to it. I just think like,
But there is a lot of this brontosaurus pile in those movies.
And the problem with it too is like it's the microcosm of the things that are wrong with this movie, right? Which are the scene goes on way too long, right? I don't think the scene even needs to exist for one thing. If you took the scene out of the movie, it wouldn't really change anything about what happens in any other part of the important thing that happens in any part of the movie. It just feels like, again, it feels like a scene that he probably wanted to do since he was 7, and he was like, I'm gonna do it, right? And
well, it also suffers from the fact that, everyone who's seen this movie clearly has seen a Jurassic Park movie before, right? Probably several of them at this point. So dinosaurs are not that impressive anymore. Yeah. Kong is impressive in 2005, but Brontosauri, we've seen those before. We've seen them done better.
And he's like, well, I won't have one Brontosauri. I'll have a herd of Brontosauri charging down a gully, then chased by like raptor-like creatures, and they're going to fall over each other and stuff. And like some of the actual like animation stuff, when it's just like the CG interacting with the CG, looks good if you look at it like stepping back. But like, the idea of having them run between their legs and stuff like that, it just doesn't work. But again, I'm sure there's a version of this scene he could have done. They were like, I know exactly how I can do this. That will work perfectly well with what I can do. But he goes, no, I want to try to do this thing, And this is one of the last times, too, you're going to see the people get composited into scenes like this. In a couple of years, they're going to be CG doubles that are running between those legs, right. And so, like, we're in a weird inflection point, too, of technology that's happening, and it just doesn't work, right? And we have this scene, then they kind of encounter Kong, and then they've got the bug scene, and it's like, this is the part of the movie where I'm just like, you could just take this out. Like, you could take this out. And like, because the problem is too, I don't care what happens to Jack, and I don't care what happens to Denham, really. I care what happens,
Yeah, except I love Denham, he when they're falling off a cliff and they're caught up in the vines and the camera's just sort of hanging there and he's going for the camera. I like that moment. But yeah, this could all be condensed a lot, but also, this movie has to be a 3-hour movie. This has to be, spectacle and more spectacle and more spectacle.
It doesn't have to be 3 hours. I will say it doesn't have to be 3 hours.
It's got to be big. It's got to be larger than life like Kong is.
Yeah, like all of this stuff with the guys, it's only because in the function of the movie, it doesn't really add anything, right? It doesn't add anything to their characters. The Denham stuff you're talking about does, right? I'm fully on board with getting more little Denham being selfish and weird. I just think like
there's a great moment that leads this off too. So he goes off, he sees the Valley of the Dinosaurs, he's shooting, rolling the camera. Then they start coming after him and everybody runs and we get like there's a moment there where we're waiting for him to show up. Mm-hmm. And then he just like runs around this corner. He's trying to be kind of nonchalant about it, but it's like, we should probably get the hell out of here. And it's just such a fun moment because, he's real happy he got that footage, but also he brought on this dinosaur stampede that's going to be the next, thing that they have to face.
Yeah.
Like this is where I really am happy that Jack Black is in this movie because he sells this perfectly.
He sells it great. He definitely sells it great. And again, the scene is just, I think the problem is, it's just like we talked about, it's just too much. It's like, we go right from this to then, then this is the problem, then this is the problem, then this is the problem. Mm-hmm. And it's just too much stuff all packed into one like continuous sequence without any breaks or anything that really like changes up what we're dealing with, right? You almost got to laugh at a certain point because you're like, and now there are bugs?
Oh man. Yeah, it is. It's a festival of excess. I mean, that's a problem with the King Kong story, the way it was originally envisioned, I think, right? Like, why does there have to be all this other stuff on Skull Island? Like, we're here for Kong. We're here for the main event. And it's like, it's like you go to the buffet and like, you don't want to fill up on the bread. And
I mean, I like the idea that it's this island out of time. Like, I don't mind that.
It's the Lost World. It's Arthur Conan Doyle. Yeah. But, we probably want to decentralize a lot of that so we can focus on Kong more.
I totally agree with you on that for sure. Though I will say, I think the Kong double T-Rex fight or triple T-Rex fight
that
is
whole
awesome.
sequence is amazing.
It fucking rules.
Was very sad to see that Bryan Singer directed some of that. Because I don't like that guy very much. Neither does anybody else anymore. No. But it's a hell of a sequence. You got to give him credit.
Yeah, no, it's a great sequence. The whole sequence is awesome. And that sequence keeps going on, but I don't mind it because...
No, it's great because it just builds and builds and builds. Yeah. And just when you think it's over, it kind of comes roaring back. Literally, the verticality of this world is amazing. You
Yeah.
know, it's very Avatar in the sense that we're up high, we're down low, we're kind of falling down off this cliff forever,
Yeah.
like through the vines. I love that stuff. And just when you think it's, you know, they're swinging around and hitting each other, he's punching dinosaurs in the face. Like, you gotta love that.
So I love that. Like, we talked about the beginning of the scene when she's like, she runs away and she encounters this monitor lizard, and then she sneaks away from that, but there's another one. And then we have this fun, like, you know, like when she goes in that log and it's like eating the log coming out. I think it really works.
Great, yeah. Right. And we think it's like something grabs it and kills it. And we see something out of focus in the background. We think it's Kong. And no, it's a fucking T-Rex.
Yeah. But again, there's something where jacking the helms up. It's like she's getting chased by two monitor lizards. There's a T-Rex coming, but he has to do a beat where giant bugs are like crawling in her, trying to get in her mouth or whatever. I'm like, why are you letting this bug get so close to your mouth? And like, get the hell out of there. And so she runs away, and then we get a T-Rex. She hides the T-Rex. I will say, I fucking love that slow reveal of the other T-Rex, like kind of stealthing up on her.
Right, well, like its head is kind of in the foreground. It looks like a rock or something. I mean, we've seen that gag before, but like the way it's done here, it's like, off the edge of a cliff and then
like when you have a dog who's like trying to sneak like something you're holding in your hand that you're eating. Absolutely. That's exactly what it looks like, you know? Love that. And then, man, when Kong when he jumps in or whatever, it rules. We didn't mention that James Newton Howard does a score for this. Howard Shore was supposed to, near the end of production, he basically got like taken off the movie, and Newton Howard came in and did the score.
I like the score very much. Considering he did it in 5 weeks, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. This part of the score was just going, man. It's great. I love that it's like, again, Peter Jackson's like, no, there's not one, there's not two, there's three. And I love the fights. I think it looks great. I love this whole mechanic of him being like, gotta keep her safe while I do this, you know, because I love that these T-Rexes are just, they are like dogs. They're like rabid ducks. They just won't stop trying to eat her, even though there's this 25-foot ape trying to break their jaws open. I love that. Even when they're hanging on those vines, I'm like, even if you eat her at this point, you're dead. Like, and it's just like,
but
sorry,
like that's how you craft a sequence like this, right? Like you got to know what the goals are and kind of where everyone stands in it. And there has to be a reason for it more than just Kong's fighting a T-Rex, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, you know, it's very easy to do giant monster stuff in movies now. Like special effects, even in 2005, would allow for all of these things. But if that sequence didn't have like a kind of a through line, or didn't have like, you know, it's like a little mini movie in and of itself, right? And it's brilliant. Like I don't mind that it's as long as it is. It's pretty long. It's about 10 minutes.
It's very long. Yeah, it's very long.
And it just kind of keeps building on itself and doubling back. And just when you, as I said, just when you think it's over, it gets more intense. And then it finally does end with that one-on-one sort of, you know, Mortal Kombat clash that we've been wanting kind of the whole time. But leading up to that, the whole downward thing that they do there where he's, you know, everyone's swinging on the vines and everything. It's just so good.
Yeah, absolutely. And we get the classic, like at the end, he breaks his jaw in half, you know, like, which I love, and then kind of plays with it.
Oh, yeah, and like it kind of shoves its skull back into it. He's very brutal with these dinosaurs. I love it. Yeah.
But the vine sequence, again, it's one of these you're like, I've never seen this before. Like, you know, that feeling is, I think
Peter Jackson loves people hanging from precarious, like he did it in Dead Alive, he did it in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Yeah. I enjoy that stuff too, you know, like you can feel it. You can feel the kind of vertigo of it.
But I've never seen a 25-foot ape fight two T-Rexes hanging on vines through a chasm. And there's some things where like that's, I think sometimes what people, you know, it doesn't happen as much anymore, which is, you know, people when they go to the movies, they want to see something they've never seen before. That's part of the whole magic of it, is being like, I've never seen this before. And now like, I feel like it's like, you know, it's like we forget that, like, you know, it used to be like, oh, we'll go to a place you could never go because we can bring these cameras here. Now, obviously with CG, that stuff is a little different now, but it's like you could do so much stuff. And I feel like the imagination has gotten squished, you know, a bunch at this point. And it's like, you know, I know that we're not going to talk about it, get into it, but I know like you didn't love weapons, right? But there are things in weapons where I'm like, I've never seen this before. And it's like,
I agree.
That's I love that about going to see especially genre stuff. I'm like, that's what I want to see. I want to be like, I've ever like the end of Avengers: Age of Ultron when the city goes up in the air. I'm like, well, never seen this before.
That's a cool sequence. Yeah, it's all I remember about that movie, but that is a very cool sequence. But this, yeah, absolutely. This is like, every kid that ever played with a dinosaur, action figures and stuff like that. Like, this is the ultimate expression of that. Like, Peter Jackson is so the overgrown man-child who's also brilliant, right? Who also like knows how to articulate this on screen. Like, he knows it's awesome, but he also knows how to like make you feel that it's awesome also.
Yeah, absolutely. So all this is great. He beats, he wins. And then after this, we get that great little quiet scene of the sunset. Yeah. Where she's like, she does the sign language, like beautiful thing or whatever. It's great. It's gorgeous. It's sweet. It's emotional, and
you feel in this moment like she's kind of resigned herself. Like, I think I'm just going to spend the rest of my life with King Kong. Yeah. And you're like, that might not be a bad way to spend the rest of your life.
No.
Like, particularly in this scene, it's weird to talk about it as being romantic, right? Because this is bestiality. This is not like, this is kind of not cool that he is an animal and she is a human. But, it's the movie kind of is careful to not make it too over.
Well, there's never going to be anything physical about it, but there is like an emotional connection between the two of them.
It is like a beloved pet kind of thing.
Sort of, yeah.
And like she's kind of his pet also in some sense. I want to mention really quickly, because I think it was earlier than this. So the Kyle Chandler character, he he leaves the group, right? Like they're searching for Anne on Skull Island.
Yeah.
And I think it's after the dinosaur scene where they run from the dinosaurs. And he turns his back on him. He's going back to the ship, and he has this monologue, and he's like, the movies make you think that heroes look like me, but heroes are guys with, what's he say? Like bald heads and beer guts and something like that. And it's like, movies never say that, right?
No.
Like it's such a great line in this movie because he's this very handsome, very sort of dashing looking guy. And it's true, like real heroism is never that, but the movies have always tried to sell us on, the good people are the guys who look like Kyle Chandler. And very often that's not the case at all. And this movie kind of like throws that in our face a little bit.
Absolutely.
I like that. It's a nice little self-aware moment. And I like that he comes back later, that he turns out to he does a hero turn later on. And then he becomes kind of a dirtbag again in the last scene, which is unnecessary. I feel like I kind of like
a complicated guy.
The redemption of Bruce Baxter, but yeah, that moment like just really stood out to me because it's such an honest and interesting sentiment that movies are so careful to avoid usually.
Absolutely, and
you have a person who does something really heroic in real life who might just be a regular looking dude, and he's played in a movie by Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah, exactly. Hi, say hello to your mother for me. Some of this part, the stuff that's not Anne and Kong, it's the stuff that I most am like get exhausted by, in the middle section.
It's exhausting, but I got it. Like I hate crawling insects, and when they fall into the gorge and there's like these things, these like otherworldly looking worm things with like teeth, and this scene, it's too much, but it's also like it's weirdly effective.
He's really good at stuff like this. Like, that's the thing. He's really good at stuff like that.
Like, you feel those things and, like, just the horror of it and the desperate, like, the characters at some point, they realize this is a last stand. Like, we actually don't think they're going to get rescued. So they're, like, desperately fighting these things off. Like, let me just take out as many of them as I can before they, like, gruesomely kill me. And a couple characters get gruesomely killed in the scene. And it's as effective as anything I've seen in like an alien movie or like any kind of, creature horror movie. I mean, it's like nauseating, and I give him credit for that. I think it's probably unnecessary. You could axe it out of the movie and nothing really. And the way, everybody comes in, there's a deus ex machina, the guys from the boat come in, they shoot a few of the bugs and then all of them just kind of go away. It doesn't really make sense.
No.
But I was glad the sequence was over because I could feel them crawling on my skin by the time, they got there.
Does Andy Serkis' character die in that scene?
He does,
right?
He's
playing a very normal man who has a very normal name.
Lumpy engulfs his head. Yeah,
that's right.
Oof. Yeah, it's gross.
This thing about it, this one thing, it's like all of these sort of sequences and ideas work in the abstract, right? They're cool ideas for horror / adventure sequences, but there's just too much of them.
Too many of them, too many sort of back to back. There is one, I think we skipped right over it, where Kong is chasing after them. They grab on, there's like
that seems great. That's what leads to the bug scene, because he shoots them down that canyon.
Right. So there's a log over a deep sort of, cliff on either side, and Kong grabs one end of it, and he's like, it's interesting too, right? What I love about this sequence is Kong is strong enough to lift it, but he's not quite strong enough to lift it and throw it over. That's what he's trying to do. So he's like struggling with it, and they're trying to hold on. That's a great sequence, because, we don't even know who to root for at this point anymore, because we're kind of on Kong's side a little bit here too. It's like, come on, just push a little farther and get rid of this problem. But also, all of our heroes from earlier in the movie are going to die if he does that. Yeah. And we don't want him to, but we also kind of want Kong to succeed. That's a very interestingly crafted sequence, and it's a lot of fun. It's a great little adventure movie moment there.
I like that sequence a lot, and I think that's what I mean by the fact that I think you can cut a lot of other stuff and just have a scene like
that's
that.
Set piece. Yeah,
a set piece like that. And I think that's enough in the trailer.
For those
that'll
sell your movie. Sure.
That's enough for those characters to do in coming, because we have the 11-minute long Kong fights T-Rex's scene. We've got all the Ann stuff, which is very exciting. I don't need the dudes coming to try to save her, because then they can't do it anyway. So it's it doesn't really work out. And that scene's important because that puts Jack on the one side of the chasm, and whatever, we get that, or whatever, where that's when the other guys come and save them, and they go kind of separate and go their separate ways.
And he goes after Ann. Sure.
He goes after Ann. The thing that I wish was, I think, a little bit more of if I remember correctly, in the original King Kong, the whole point is he's going there to capture the beast, right? That's his whole point. He's not going there to make a movie necessarily. He's going there to capture this thing. And I think I wish that the capturing thing had been brought in a little earlier and put a little bit more motivation for Carl or something. I think you could just sort of tweak it a little bit to make it more streamlined. And I think it'd be more effective, because there are times where he really does try to make things emotional, where when Hayes dies and Jamie Bell's crying, and I'm like, I like Hayes. I do not care about Jamie Bell's relationship to this guy. I only know him from the Give Him a Book. And he's I found, and he found him in a crate or in an animal cage or whatever.
I was very sad when Hayes got killed, though.
I was sad because I liked the character, but I wasn't I wonder how the other characters are going to feel about this. That wasn't what in my mind, So,
also, I mean, it's just another structural problem with the movie, right? They can't come back for the New York sequence. So we don't see the captain. We don't see Jamie Bell's character. They just kind of disappear from the movie.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It would be nice if we could see them.
Yeah. They should be at that premiere. Why are they not at the show?
Why don't we have Thomas Kretschmann?
Give them front row seats. Come on, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we get Jack saving Ann from Kong. Nice, he chases. I think that scene is really fun. When they're running away from Kong and trying to figure out a way to get away from him and all this stuff. And we got the bats sort of as part of the whole thing, and them going to the gate and everything. And I love once again, not giving into the temptation to give Carl a redemption thing, right? Where he's literally risking their lives so he can maybe catch this thing.
Yeah.
He gets worse. Yeah. Though I do like it when he gets so pissed that the bugs killed his cameraman or whatever, that he goes freaking martial arts with his tripod on all of the bugs. But he gets to that gate, and I think again, Jackson's just good at this stuff. The capture sequence is really good, really tense. You really feel the emotion because you're there, because Ann is the central part of that. So you're in emotionally for what's going on. And then it's so funny, we go back to New York. There's still 50 minutes left in the movie when we go back to New York. And I think this,
there's a lot of credits at the end.
There's probably 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Maybe 35 minutes left. But we go back to New York, and again, I think really just the beginning opening part, I think this ending sequence is fantastic. I think that it knows its focus. It knows what it should be focused on, and it really focuses on those things. I love the sadness and the sort of kind of sliminess of the show, and you really do feel bad, and I love that line from Jack where he's there's nothing Carl doesn't love that he doesn't destroy or whatever. That's a great line. I think that's really great.
It's fun too, because this gets
Yeah.
we bring back like the movie producer people, and now they're
Yeah.
all they love
They love
Carl
him.
Denham, yeah, because he's making the money again.
Yeah.
You know, the commentary in this is not subtle, but it's there at least. Like it's, you know, at least we don't kind of leave them behind at this
Yeah.
point. And then we know what's about to happen here, but there's enough. The pacing is good enough. I love the bit with Anne. We see her backstage and, you know, putting makeup on, looking kind of sad and like, oh man, is she actually going to be in the King Kong show? And then we get the reveal that she's doing a play in this little low rent theater. That's really nice. We see Jack Driscoll, the play he wrote for her. He's doing it with some other. There's so many Naomi Watts lookalikes in this movie. like I guess that's to set up what we have in the next scene where Kong is, you know, looking for her and picks up every random blonde woman he sees and puts them down roughly, but not too roughly, which I love.
Though I'd say Cry Havoc is a terrible name for a comedy. It does not sound like a comedy.
Yeah, I was wondering about that too.
It sounds like a Neil LaBute play.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to be very serious.
Good pull.
Thank you. But I think all this is great. I like the escape sequence. I like, you know.
Oh, but this bit in the theater, I love. One of my favorite moments. So the look that he gives Adrian Brody in the scene. But when he like jumps up, you're the theater person. What do they call the balcony or the mezzanine or whatever? He jumps onto there and like it can't support his weight and it starts crumbling underneath him. What a cool idea that is. And he's just like swinging his arm and the theater seats are flying all over the place. I love this so much.
It's great. All this is great. Everything to the end now I think is top of the line. Like
the Kong rampage, the romantic scene, the little interlude, the Central Park at Christmas time. That's really wonderful.
Yeah.
Love it's a little
moment. It's a little much, but I love that moment where he's like laughing while they're like, you know, it's cute. It's just, it's nice. You know?
He's never stepped on ice, but how does he not fall through the ice? By the way,
that's true. I didn't think about that. That's true.
The mezzanine of a theater can't support him, but this frozen pond can.
Yeah. But it's very nice, very cute. Watts again is great. And I love that moment where like he finally sees her in the way that they reveals her. It's just so beautiful and so romantic and poetic looking. You know, I love that. And I love that she's like, I love the difference, right? The stark difference between when he takes her here from where we talked about at the very beginning or the part where she first takes her, where it's like violent and rough and she's scared. And this is like very nice. You know, it's very cute and sweet.
He holds her very gently. He places her down very gingerly. I like that a lot. Yeah. I'm sorry that like one of the things that I did remember, like when I saw them get on that pond, I was like, there's going to be like a jump scare almost here. There's a moment where, you know, this lovely scene that they're sharing together goes completely to shit. And it's like it's like an instant thing. And I was kind of waiting for it because I remember it really caught me off guard. It's very well done. And it really caught me off guard the first time I saw it. But like 20 years later, I was like, oh yeah, like someone's going to like shoot a mortar at him. And then we're going to the Empire State Building. Yeah. And that's exactly what happens.
But I mentioned, I did really like Adrian Brody. Like I like the thing where he's like, I'm going to draw him off, you know, and like the car chase. I thought the car stuff was really good. I thought, you know, I loved the way it was framed and shot and all that integration of the effects I thought looked really nice. And then, we get the Empire State Building thing. And I think
the city, and again,
it looked amazing.
Like the New York that he creates for this movie it's so amazing looking. Like it's whatever, you know, I'm sure there's some model work and I'm sure there's a lot of CGI there also, but like it's so believable. It also has that like vintage studio sort of feel about it. It's perfectly realized for what this is.
And it's what like you want New York to look like in your mind, right?
In a King Kong movie that is a throwback to that era. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I love that about it.
It's not a Ouija photo. It's like Hollywood's take on New York in that area.
Absolutely.
And it's perfect.
And I think that, you know, I think one of the things that is a ding against this movie, and not because of the movie itself, but just because of what it's doing, is that because it's a remake of King Kong, you just know what's going to happen. So it's like, this stuff is all really good, but there's still part of your brain that's like, just, okay, let's go. Like, I know he's going to climb the Empire State Building and get shot a bunch and fall off of it. Like, I know that's what's going to happen, right? But again, but considering that, I think he does a really great job, again, because he seeded all of this character stuff, all this emotional stuff. That's the difference, right? That's the separator between the original and this, is that You
Well,
feel
and she's in so much more peril from all the stuff
Yes.
that's, you know, the planes that are shooting at him. There's this great moment where she's inside this like glassed in room, and the bullets are breaking the glass, flying in, and she's running away from them. You know, it's a kind of typical action movie scene. But when we're supposed to be focusing on Kong, like, oh, right, she's at the top of a very tall building and people are shooting at her.
Yeah.
You know, it's a well crafted for what it is. I love Driscoll, you know, riding up the elevator. We see that shot of the thing, you know, the meter showing what floor he's on. It's like, you know, he's trying to get to the top.
Yeah.
It's a very well crafted sequence. And, you know, we are in some sense waiting for this, and it at least delivers, right?
It does deliver.
If this sequence was like kind of, you know, half-hearted, I think it would ruin the whole movie, but it's not. He goes pretty much for broke here.
No. You know, I think that again,
we do get a nice it's a sunrise this time, but you know, there's this one where the beautiful callback. It's a little much like the scene on the pond is, but I don't mind it at this point.
No,
you know,
I think it works.
This movie's earned my trust by now, and I think we can be okay with it.
And you need that moment, right? Because you need the moment of just like it comes full circle, right? It's now she understands that he understands, and it's just another nail like in your heart for what's going to happen to this thing, you know. Again, I'm like, part of me is like, guys are really irresponsible. Just like these plane fighters, even after they see that there's a girl there, they still keep shooting at him. I'm like, there's a human being there. This ape cares more about this human's life than you do, you know? But I think it looks
another
great.
thing I love as much as I love a tramp steamer is a 2-seater biplane with, oh man, just like, I don't know. I was born in the wrong era, I guess. Should have been around for those days. I want to fly on a dirigible. Like, when can you do that in 2025?
Who knows? I think the sequence works really well. I think I love the way that he shoots. Like, he changes up the way he's framing or what perspective you're in when the planes are, you know, like kind of diving at him. I do think, again, just like the whole movie, it's like, Pete, you probably had one too many, or maybe two too many planes diving at him, shooting him like passes.
Too many, like they kind of circle a lot, and there's this could be maybe, you know, one less shot of this, like this could be condensed a little bit too. I think.
I don't need to see 3 different sequences of him trying to grab the plane and missing. You know, it's like do it once, do it twice, and then like let's get a couple where he actually grabs one, because you get those are fun.
I
love
really when he grabs one and chucks it at the other plane.
Yeah, that's awesome.
They hit each other in midair.
That rules, you know. I love that shot when it does the wide shot and you see like the silhouette of the planes all diving down at him, standing on top. That looks awesome. Anytime they do the big wides and he's standing on top and you're seeing like the whole city and he's like beating his chest and like roaring.
Yeah. Well,
awesome.
and the wide shots where you see them coming in from a distance and like it sort of grows bigger and bigger and bigger in the frame. I really like that stuff.
Yeah. Just starting, and the James Newton Howard score here is like going off too. It's really good in these moments. And then once again, you bring it back down again. What Jackson is so good at, he brings it back down to just like, here's Kong, here's Ann, and this is really what it's all about, you know. And the devastation on her face when he falls makes you really feel it, and I think in a really real way. And that's like the achievement of the movie, right? Is making you go like, I really care about what happens to this 25-foot tall ape that's murdered 30 people at least, you know? So it's like that's really an achievement, I think, in those things, from both the digital effects, the direction, and the performance from Serkis.
Yeah, there's a tragedy in this scene that the movie actually earns, which is pretty incredible, because it's a creature feature, you know, more than it is anything else. And yet we are fully on the side of the creature here, and we don't want it to die. And, you know, whatever Kong has done, Kong has earned our sympathy at this point. And it's, seeing him fall, we're kind of right there with her in that moment.
And then, once again, Jack shows up, and I'm like, what are you even doing, Jack? She could have gotten down off this building by herself. You know, it's like he doesn't save her at all.
No.
You know, but and then we get the beauty killed the beast line at the end. And I think Black just delivers it well. And I know that like, you know, Jackson was always going to have that line in there because obviously it's like the most famous line from the original movie, you know, but I'm a little bit like, I agree with the reporter. The planes did kill the...
I'll tell you, I like the instinct that he has here where we get that line and cut to credits, right? Like this
Movie
movie
over.
is over. We don't need to do anything else. I think a lesser director, let's get one more wide shot of the city. We paid for it. You might as well see it one more time. And, we know this is the thing. This is the period at the end of this story. Then we get those beautiful Art Deco titles again. And at this point, I was just like, I fucking love this movie. I can't wait to see it again. And flaws aside, I wish more people would do this. This is, I mentioned when we were talking about the Lord of the Rings movies, how much hope and just optimism I had for blockbuster filmmaking after seeing those movies. Like, they're all going to be this good. And this one, I think, kind of delivers on that promise. And, after this.
Yeah. Well, Jackson's a special filmmaker. That's the thing. It's just like, and I think that's the thing we probably didn't realize fully when in this era was like, go around, there are been great blockbusters since then, but this guy has a very particular style and humanity to him that is not present in all filmmakers like this, right? He has a weirdness to him that he just won't let get stamped out, that I think often gets stamped out, by filmmakers. And I think we were also in an era at this point where a lot of these guys like Jackson, like Sam Raimi, who were just like weird enough where their big movies were just weird enough where it was like, this is going to be what it's going to be like, that's amazing. Like, we can get more more superhero movies like Spider-Man 2 and more blockbusters like that. Like that's what it seemed like was going to happen. Right. But like all things,
when you go from Spider-Man 2 to Spider-Man 3.
Yeah, but not even just that. But again, that's the thing about that one. It's like it's a microcosm because like Raimi, it's not the movie Raimi wanted to make, right? Raimi wanted to make a totally different movie, and he was kind of forced into making the movie that he made, and then it led to what it led to, But I think it's just, but even that movie is weird. It's really weird, and I think like we've lost a lot of that, right? And I think obviously you can blame a lot of this, like most things on Marvel, where it's like and I don't mean to say like, I think what happens too much in obviously all these places, especially because they're all owned by people who just want to make money, is that they see a success from one group and they want to make, and then all of a sudden they feel like everything has to be that thing, right? And so you end up, Marvel ends up being, at blame for this, but if they were the only ones making movies like that, it would be like, okay, that's fine. That's what they do. And everyone else
it's the IP-driven thing that you were talking about before, and Marvel just happened to be the biggest IP.
Yeah, exactly. And
it becomes the scapegoat, but like there was plenty of other, Clash of the Titans, right? The Clash of the Titans remake is a good example of that.
Yeah. It's also like, and also I mean, like, let's make safe doubles and not try to hit home runs, and then I think we're getting back a little bit into a place where people are trying to hit home runs again. And I think that's great, but the problem with that is people need to be comfortable with the possibility of failure. Right. And I think like that is very uncomfortable with people who are not creative people. They're business people first. And that's what happens when big, huge corporations, all they care about is a number in a spreadsheet. They're the ones who make all the decisions. That's what you get. Right. And I think like this movie is very much not what's the optimal spreadsheet organization we could do. This is very much just like, this guy wants to make a movie. He made a really successful movie. Let him do whatever he wants, and we get that too seldomly now, like there are very few directors who can do that. Nolan is like one of the only people who can go like, yeah, I'm going to make a 3-hour movie about Robert Oppenheimer. Okay, I guess so. Like, I don't know, do what you want to do. And it makes like $300 million and wins the Best Picture. But there isn't a lot of people like that, right? And so
I also think this movie is the old fashionedness of it is something that you just don't see anymore. And even a movie that is, and I haven't seen it, so I'm not gonna like dump on it, but the Fantastic Four movie they just made, right? That's set in the 50s or something like that. Like it kind of has that vintage look. There's I saw the trailer. I love the look of it, but I could just tell the jokes and the dialogue and everything is very modern. And this movie is not afraid to do like Naomi Watts' performance in the diner there, where she's kind of doing the old-fashioned acting. Like they'll never take chances like that now, and that's unfortunate, right? Like even if we are in some sense paying tribute to film history, we're not gonna do it in such a heartfelt and nakedly reverent way. Now it's always got to have like that little edge of modernity and honest like dishonesty about it.
I get what you're saying for sure. It's like I said, faults and all. I think it's a really fun movie, and I think it takes swings, and when it hits its high points, it's, you know, it's something really special. And I'm glad that's how I still feel about it. You know, when I saw it back in 2005, I was like,
me too.
I definitely had the feeling where I was like, I think it's a little bit too long. Like there's a little bit too much, but I think overall it's like really good. And I was worried, like I said at the beginning, that I wasn't going to feel that way this time. And I did. So I'm really happy about that.
I think I saw it in 2005 knowing this was the guy who had just made Return of the King. So like I was prepared for very long. I was prepared for, you know, I remember sitting down in that theater being like, we're going to be here a while and I'm good with it.
Oh, me too. When they announced it was 3 hours, I was like, let's throw a party. Love it. Yep. And then when I saw it, I was like, well, like, we could probably get rid of some of this stuff, you know.
Yeah. But I was, you know, I was never going to say at the time, like, I'm not looking forward to a 3 hour King Kong movie from Peter Jackson.
I mean, honestly, even now, like when someone's like, some director I like is like, the movie's real long. I'm like, well, I don't have a lot of time, but still, go off, King. Like do whatever you're going to do, you know?
I still got to see The Brutalist, but I'm glad it's as long as it is.
I got my tickets to One Battle After Another.
Yeah, me too.
I'm going on
people
Monday.
are saying that's the best Paul Thomas Anderson movie. They're wrong.
I'm going on Friday. Sorry, I'm going on Friday.
But the fact that it's even in the conversation, yeah.
It's so cool. Like, it's just great, you know? I'm really excited to see that. Really, really excited to see that. It's been actually a pretty decent year, you know, for interesting movies, I will say. So that's pretty cool that it has been that. Next time, we're going to talk about The Lovely Bones, a movie I saw one time in the movie theater.
Same here.
And am fascinated / dreading watching it.
Well, I remember going into that one like, oh man, the director of the Lord of the Rings trilogy and King Kong adapted this very beloved novel. This is going to be awesome.
I'm very decidedly not being awesome, but we will see what happens when we watch it again. And then we have 3 more Middle-earth movies, and then we're done with Pete. So we're getting towards the end of his career, which is insane to say considering how long ago Battle of the Five Armies came out. But yeah, I mean, this was the one I was most kind of oddly excited to talk about because I think it is the weirdest big movie he's ever made, you know? And so I think that's why it's a lot of fun to talk about. But if you enjoyed this episode, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Check out intrepidfilmographers.com for our Substack. You can get the podcast there. We have done a bunch of directors before this. Joe Wright and Joseph Kosinski and Karen Kusama and Ben Affleck. Am I forgetting somebody? I must be forgetting somebody, right? Am I forgetting anybody? No, I don't think I'm forgetting anybody.
No, I think that's all.
Was that like the third one we did? Yeah. So I covered them all. Okay, so some great episodes there. We still have yet to deliver on the promised F1 episode. It's out on streaming now, so we can definitely rewatch that and talk about that. Also, maybe we watch the pilot of that Mussolini show and then the first episode and then talk about that as well, the Joe Wright.
I'm going to watch it anyway. So yeah, we might as well.
So we can definitely check those out.
They should have called it That Mussolini Show.
That Mussolini show seems too on the nose for Joe Wright to be making this. It's probably fake, which is what I said to Nick when he asked me about it.
I'll be honest. I saw a couple of like stills from it. I was like, is this AI? Like it's, you know, it's a very handsomely mounted, but like, you know, if you just like typed into, you know, Grok or whatever, like show me what a Joe Wright Mussolini show would look like. It would give you pretty much that. Okay. Well, I gotta say, I haven't seen a frame of it, so I have to check that out. When you see a frame, let me know if I'm right about that. I will. So yeah, next time, The Lovely Bones, stay tuned for that. But until then, thank you, Nick. Thank you, Bobby. Thank you to everybody who's listening or watching. Until next time, be good to one another. Later.